Have you ever wondered why the things you cannot have often consume you the most? Why is it that forbidden desire lingers longer in the mind than what is freely offered? Why does the thing you are told not to touch become the thing you dream of night after night? Carl Jung believed this was no accident. He saw forbidden desire not as a moral failing, but as a mirror reflecting back the hidden parts of your unconscious. It is not the object of desire that tortures you. It is the shadow beneath it. Desire, especially the forbidden kind, is a psychological trapdoor. It pulls you into depths you did not expect to visit. For men, this often takes the shape of longing for the unattainable woman, the woman who stands just beyond reach, who does not bend to expectation, who carries a kind of spiritual detachment that stings the ego like cold steel. She becomes a symbol, not just a person. She becomes the anima, the projection of his inner feminine, the lost half of his soul. But the tragedy is this: the more he tries to possess her, the more he is really trying to possess his own missing self. Jung taught that desire is rarely about the other person. It is about the hunger for wholeness. And forbidden desire, whether it's for a woman, for power, for success, for recognition, is the most dangerous kind. It forces you to confront the walls of your own psyche. It shows you the cracks where ego meets shadow, where control meets chaos, where longing meets shame. Have you ever been desired by a man who could not have you? You might have noticed the shift in his gaze, the way his eyes darken, the way his voice lowers, the way his energy starts to circle around you like a wolf circling prey. But what he's truly circling is not you. He's circling his own unmet needs, his own unloved parts, his own unclaimed vulnerability. Some women become addicted to this dynamic. They find a perverse kind of power in being the forbidden object of desire. But beware. Power that is rooted in another person's projections is not real power. It is borrowed power. It can turn quickly into a prison. And yet, there is also a sacred mystery in it, because the woman who becomes the forbidden desire often awakens something in the man that nothing else could: his own shadow. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate." The forbidden woman is often the one who triggers this awakening. She is the mirror that reflects his fragmented soul. She is the catalyst for his individuation, his path toward becoming whole. But this awakening is not gentle. It's violent. It strips away illusion. It forces a man to face the parts of himself he has ignored: the lust, the obsession, the fear of rejection, the terror of insignificance. Many men run from this confrontation. They try to silence their longing by conquering the woman, seducing her, reducing her to something ordinary, something they can control. But the more they try to own her, the more they lose the very thing they crave: mystery. A truly feminine woman, one rooted in her own depth, her own spiritual center, will not allow herself to be reduced in this way. She understands the seduction of being the forbidden fruit, but she also understands the poison of it. She knows that being desired is not the same as being loved. She knows that longing often says more about the man's inner fractures than about her worth. And yet, if you are that woman, it is crucial to understand the psychological responsibility you carry. You are not just dealing with romance. You are dealing with archetypes. You are dealing with the anima and the shadow, the ego and the soul, the masculine hunger for union with the feminine principle. You must tread carefully. You must ask yourself, am I playing with his projections, or am I guiding him silently toward his own healing? Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be possessed. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give a man is the opportunity to confront his own emptiness without using you as a distraction. This is not cruelty. This is alchemy. Carl Jung did not believe that love, desire, or even obsession were merely personal experiences. He saw them as mythic forces, archetypes, moving through human lives like ancient rivers cutting through stone. When a man becomes obsessed with a woman he cannot control, he's not just dealing with heartbreak or ego bruises. He is confronting the deeper parts of his own psyche that he has long suppressed. This woman, especially if she embodies depth, silence, and spiritual femininity, represents something far more dangerous than romance. She symbolizes the gateway to his unconscious. And the unconscious, as Jung warned, is not a safe place for the unprepared. Many men are addicted to the chase, not because they want the woman herself, but because they crave relief from their inner emptiness. But when the woman they desire refuses to collapse into their arms, when she remains sovereign, enigmatic, detached, they are forced into an unbearable confrontation with the parts of themselves they would rather forget. This is where the psychological death begins. A man's ego, built over years of social conditioning, survival mechanisms, and personal pride, is suddenly shattered by rejection, not necessarily by words but by silence, by mystery, by feminine absence. It's not the literal woman he mourns. It's the collapse of the persona he built to avoid feeling powerless. Jung described this as the encounter with the shadow. The shadow is everything you deny about yourself. Your insecurity, your rage, your manipulative tendencies, your neediness, your fear of being nothing without external validation. For most men, these shadows are buried deep beneath competence, charm, bravado, or success. But the moment a woman triggers their forbidden desire and refuses to surrender to it, the mask cracks. He is left staring into the abyss of himself. And the feminine woman who knows her own power senses this. She does not need to explain it. She simply watches, from a place of calm detachment, knowing that his suffering is not her cruelty. It is his initiation. In Jungian psychology, this is the moment where a man must choose. Will he spiral into obsession, blame, and control attempts? Or will he use the pain as an alchemical fire to burn away the false self? This is not just about romance. This is about transformation. But beware, the shadow does not go quietly. For many men, the first instinct is not to grow, but to possess. If they cannot have the woman physically, they might try to own her emotionally, through guilt, through manipulation, through subtle psychological games. They may oscillate between love bombing and cold withdrawal, between confessions of devotion and ruthless detachment, hoping she will eventually break. But the spiritually awakened woman will not break. She understands the cost of sacrificing her depth for temporary affection. She knows that true union cannot happen when one person is lost in ego and the other stands in soul. She waits, not for him to return to her, but for him to return to himself. This is the paradox of spiritual attraction. The more you try to control what you desire, the more it slips through your fingers. The more you release it, the closer you come to real intimacy. Not with another person, but with your own psyche. When a man confronts this, when he lets go of control and allows himself to grieve the loss of his projections, something profound happens. He begins to integrate. He starts to see the woman not as a goddess to be conquered or a prize to be won, but as a mirror of his own soul work. He starts to love not with hunger, but with presence. And for the woman, this is the moment where she must decide. Will she allow him back into her world now that he sees her clearly? Or will she remain in the quiet solitude of her own becoming, knowing that some men are not meant to stay, but only to awaken? In the end, Jung believed this process was not about getting what you want. It was about becoming who you truly are. Painful, raw, beautiful, necessary. Carl Jung taught that every man carries within him an unconscious image of the feminine, a template known as the anima. The anima is not just a collection of romantic fantasies. It is the embodiment of everything a man associates with mystery, emotion, creativity, chaos, beauty, and intuition. It is the gateway to his inner world. When a man meets a woman who aligns with his anima projection, especially a woman who is emotionally elusive, spiritually deep, or painfully unattainable, his psyche reacts as though he has found a missing piece of his soul. But here lies the danger. He hasn't fallen in love with her. He has fallen in love with his own projection of her. This is why desire becomes obsession. He sees in her a reflection of what he has disowned in himself, the tenderness he represses, the vulnerability he hides, the longing for transcendence he has never allowed himself to fully experience. She becomes both muse and tormentor. He chases her not just for love, but for completion, for wholeness, for a reunion with the lost feminine within his own unconscious. But projections are fragile. They crack under the weight of reality. When the woman asserts boundaries, when she maintains her spiritual detachment, when she refuses to be controlled or tamed, the man faces a brutal realization. She is not his anima. She is herself. She is not there to complete him. She is there to reflect his incompleteness. This triggers what Jung described as an ego death, a psychological crisis where the man must confront the split between who he thinks he is and who he truly is beneath his defenses. The pain of this moment is often mistaken for heartbreak, but it is much deeper. It is the collapse of illusion. For the man, this is the initiation into shadow work. He must ask, why do I need to control what I love? Why do I desire most what refuses me? What am I truly hungry for? Her body, her attention, or my own wholeness? This is where spiritual masculinity is born, not through domination, but through surrender, not to her, but to himself. And what of the woman in this dynamic? She carries her own burden. The spiritually awake woman must navigate the delicate balance between compassion and detachment. She knows that being the object of a man's anima projection is both flattering and dangerous. It can feel powerful to be adored, worshipped, even obsessed over. But she must remember, this is not about her. It is about the mirror she holds. If she is not careful, she may fall into the trap of emotional enmeshment, confusing his obsession with real love, mistaking his spiritual hunger for genuine intimacy. If she tries to heal him, fix him, or become the fantasy he projects onto her, she will lose herself. And once she dissolves into his expectations, the mystery that drew him to her will vanish. The obsession will die, not because it is fulfilled, but because the sacred tension has been broken. Jung warned that this tension, the space between longing and surrender, is where transformation happens. A conscious woman knows this. She does not soften her boundaries to ease his suffering. She allows the discomfort to do its work. Not because she is cruel, but because she honors the process of individuation, the journey of becoming whole for both herself and the man who desires her. Sometimes this means walking away. Sometimes it means staying present, but silent. Sometimes it means loving from afar, letting the connection exist in the spiritual realm without dragging it into the mundane. The truth is, some connections are meant to awaken you, not to keep you company. Carl Jung believed the soul speaks in symbols, not words. And often, the symbol of the unattainable woman is the soul's way of calling a man back to himself, not to possess the feminine, but to integrate her within. When this happens, desire shifts. Obsession softens. Love matures. He no longer needs to own her. He simply honors her. And in that moment, both the man and the woman are free, not from each other, but from the chains of unconsciousness. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." This is the essence of the forbidden desire dynamic. The spiritually charged attraction between a man and a woman who awakens his unconscious. It is not about love in the conventional sense. It is about transformation, death, and rebirth of the ego. When a man desires a woman he cannot control, he is not just facing rejection. He is confronting the limits of his persona, the version of himself he performs for the world. The more she maintains her mystery, the more she refuses to collapse into his projections. The deeper he is pushed into his own darkness. And here's where the alchemy begins. Desire that is unfulfilled becomes psychic fuel. It creates tension, heat, pressure. In spiritual alchemy, this is called the nigredo phase, the blackening. It's when everything familiar crumbles, when illusions die, and when the soul is forced to look at its own nakedness without distraction. For the man, this may feel like madness at first. He may spiral into fantasies, replay conversations, obsess over what he could have done differently. He may blame her, resent her, or romanticize her. But if he stays in the fire long enough, if he resists the urge to numb himself with conquest or distraction, something extraordinary happens. He starts to see her clearly, not as his possession, not as his savior, but as a symbol of his own inner work. She is not the destination. She is the catalyst. And this realization frees him. It allows him to move from obsession to integration, from chasing external desire to embracing his inner feminine, his anima, the parts of his psyche he has ignored: tenderness, vulnerability, creativity, emotional depth. He becomes more than a man who wants. He becomes a man who understands. This is the Jungian path to individuation, the process of becoming whole. But wholeness is not about getting everything you desire. It's about holding the tension of opposites: love and detachment, desire and letting go, power and surrender. The spiritually conscious man learns to love without needing to possess. He learns to admire mystery without needing to solve it. He learns to sit in longing without destroying himself or the woman for relief. And the woman? The conscious woman knows she is not here to be an object of obsession. She is here to be herself, sovereign, mysterious, radiant in her own being. She does not feed the man's projections, nor does she shrink to make him comfortable. She allows him to go through his own dark night of the soul, because she trusts the alchemical process. This is not cruelty, it is respect. True feminine power does not seduce for control, it evokes transformation. Sometimes this means the man will return to her, not as a seeker of control, but as an equal. Other times, he will not. He will walk his path elsewhere, changed by the encounter, perhaps never fully understanding what she awakened in him. But she will know. She will carry the quiet knowledge that her presence cracked open a part of his soul he could not reach alone. This is the bittersweet gift of conscious attraction. It is not about fairy tale endings. It is about psychic evolution. Carl Jung believed that relationships were the ultimate spiritual practice, not because they bring happiness, but because they force us to face our shadows, to wrestle with projection, to dissolve ego attachments, to become whole. So if you find yourself longing for someone you cannot have, or if you are the woman silently watched from afar, understand this: it is not a failure. It is not a curse. It is the soul calling you both into deeper waters, not to own each other, but to meet yourselves.